There are books that ask us to become wiser. There are books that ask us to become stronger. And then there are books that quietly whisper something altogether different. Stop running. Look around. The miracle you have been searching for has always been here. Welcome back to Applied Library, where timeless books become living conversations, where ancient wisdom meets modern life, and where every page offers not just knowledge, but another way of seeing ourselves. Today we open one of the most mysterious, misunderstood, and beloved books ever translated into English, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyám, a small collection of 4-line poems, written nearly 1,000 years ago, yet still able to stop us in our tracks today. But this is more than a book of poetry. It is an invitation to question certainty, to laugh at ambition, to embrace impermanence, and perhaps to finally make peace with time itself. So find a comfortable place, take a slow breath, and let's begin. Before becoming one of the world's most quoted poets, Omar Khayyám was something else entirely. He was a mathematician, an astronomer, a philosopher, a scientist. Living in Persia during the 11th century, he helped reform the Persian calendar so accurately that many historians consider it even more precise than the Gregorian calendar we still use today. He solved algebraic equations centuries before Europe embraced higher mathematics. He studied the stars, measured time, questioned reality. Yet history remembers him not primarily for his equations, but for verses. Short, elegant, playful, sometimes rebellious, sometimes deeply spiritual, always profoundly human. Curiously, the book most people know today is not simply Omar Khayyám's original work. For centuries, these Persian quatrains remained relatively unknown outside the Persian-speaking world. Everything changed in 1859 when the English writer Edward FitzGerald published his loose and highly poetic English translation, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyám. At first, almost no one noticed it. The book sold poorly. Copies gathered dust on bookstore shelves. Then something unexpected happened. Artists, writers, poets, and readers began discovering it. They passed it to friends, quoted it in letters, read it aloud in salons and libraries. Within a few decades, FitzGerald's version had become one of the most celebrated books in the English-speaking world. It inspired painters, musicians, philosophers, even everyday readers who found comfort in its gentle reminder that life is astonishingly brief. Ironically, many scholars would later point out that FitzGerald had not translated Omar Khayyám word for word. He had recreated him. He rearranged verses, combined ideas, adapted meanings. Some even call it less a translation and more a collaboration across 8 centuries. And perhaps that is exactly why it continues to live. Not as a museum artifact, but as a living conversation. One of the great themes running through the Rubaiyat is astonishingly simple. Life passes, faster than we imagine. Every sunrise is unique. Every conversation impossible to repeat. Every embrace already becoming memory. Omar Khayyám doesn't tell us this to make us afraid. Quite the opposite. He asks us, if everything is temporary, why postpone living? How many moments have we sacrificed, waiting for a future that never quite arrives? How often do we postpone joy until conditions become perfect? The promotion, the retirement, the relationship, the healing, the confidence, the money, yet someday has an extraordinary habit of becoming never. The Rubaiyat gently smiles at this human tendency. It reminds us that life isn't happening later. It is happening now. Not after we solve every problem. Not after we become someone else. Now, Imagine holding a cup of tea. How often do we drink it without tasting it? Already thinking about emails, appointments, news, tomorrow. Meanwhile, the warmth disappears, the aroma fades, the tea grows cold. Perhaps our days pass exactly the same way. If you've ever opened the Rubaiyat, you've probably noticed something immediately. Wine, cups, taverns, celebration. Again and again. Some readers take this literally, others see something far deeper. In Persian mystical traditions, wine often represents awakening, ecstasy, divine love, freedom from rigid certainty. The tavern becomes a place where social masks disappear, where titles no longer matter, where everyone becomes simply human. Whether Omar Khayyám intended these symbols literally or metaphorically has been debated for centuries. Perhaps the greater question is, why are we so eager to separate them? Sometimes sharing a meal with loved ones really is sacred. Sometimes laughter becomes prayer. Sometimes music reveals more truth than arguments ever could. Maybe the cup is less important than what awakens inside the person holding it. One reason the Rubaiyat still feels surprisingly modern is its skepticism. Omar Khayyám asks uncomfortable questions about religion, destiny, knowledge, not because questioning destroys faith, but because questioning can deepen it. He recognizes that human beings desperately crave certainty. We want neat answers, clear rules, perfect explanations. Yet reality rarely cooperates. The older we become, the more mysterious life appears. Children ask simple questions. Adults discover increasingly complex ones. Perhaps wisdom isn't collecting more answers. Perhaps wisdom is becoming comfortable living beside mystery. Have you noticed that the people who seem most peaceful are rarely those who claim to know everything? Instead, they seem wonderfully curious, open, gentle, capable of saying, "I don't know," without fear. One of the Rubaiyat's most famous images speaks of sitting beneath a tree with bread, wine, a book, and someone you love. Simple, almost ordinary. Yet within that simplicity lies an extraordinary revolution. Modern culture constantly tells us that happiness exists somewhere else. A bigger house, another country, more followers, higher income, better body, another achievement. The Rubaiyat quietly replies, what if enough is already here? Life contains suffering, loss, illness, uncertainty. Omar Khayyám never denies this. Yet alongside sorrow, there are also birds singing, fresh bread, shared laughter, morning light crossing the floor, the face of a friend, the sound of rain, the silence after forgiveness. These moments rarely make headlines, but perhaps they are life itself. Every civilization eventually learns the same lesson. Empires rise, empires disappear. Kings become forgotten names. Cities become ruins. The Rubaiyat observes this with remarkable calm. Time does not negotiate, it simply continues. Instead of resisting this reality, Omar Khayyám invites us to become humble before it. Our arguments, our anxieties, our endless plans may feel enormous today, but viewed across centuries, they become surprisingly small. Oddly enough, this realization doesn't diminish life. It enlarges it, because when we stop trying to control everything, we become available to experience everything. It is remarkable that a slim collection of Persian quatrains, reimagined by an English poet in Victorian Britain, still speaks to readers around the globe. Why? Because every generation asks the same questions. What makes life meaningful? How should we spend our limited time? Can beauty coexist with suffering? Is uncertainty something to fear or something to embrace? Technology changes. Human nature changes much more slowly. That is why books survive. Not because they preserve old information, but because they preserve enduring questions. So, what does this ancient collection of verses ask of us today? Not to abandon responsibility, not to escape reality, but perhaps to live a little more awake. You might begin with something beautifully ordinary. Drink your morning coffee without looking at your phone. Watch a sunset without photographing it. Tell someone you appreciate them before tomorrow arrives. Read one poem instead of scrolling 100 headlines. Walk slowly. Notice birds. Laugh more easily. Forgive a little sooner. Remember that every ordinary Tuesday was once the future you hoped to reach. The Rubaiyat doesn't promise immortality. It offers something perhaps more valuable: presence. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about Omar Khayyám is that he encouraged people simply to seek pleasure. Look more carefully. Beneath every cup of wine is a meditation on mortality. Beneath every celebration is gratitude. Beneath every question is wonder. He reminds us that life is precious precisely because it ends. The flower blooms, then fades. The song begins, then finishes. The conversation ends. The stars disappear with dawn. Their beauty exists because they do not last forever. And perhaps so does ours. Thank you for spending this time with me inside Applied Library. If today's journey through the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyám resonated with you, take a moment to share in the comments. Which verse or which idea stays with you the most? These conversations are one of the things that make this community so special, and I always enjoy reading your reflections. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to Applied Library. It truly helps the channel reach more readers, thinkers, and lifelong learners who are searching for timeless wisdom hidden within classic books. If you'd like to read the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyám for yourself, I've included an affiliate link in the description below. Purchasing through that link helps support the channel at no extra cost to you, allowing us to continue exploring remarkable books together. And if you know someone who appreciates poetry, philosophy, Persian literature, or simply thoughtful reflections on life, consider sharing this episode with them. A single book has a way of finding the right reader at the right moment. Until our next visit, keep reading slowly, keep questioning gently, and remember, sometimes the deepest libraries are not built from stone, but from the quiet pages that change the way we see the world. Until next time, take care.